Thank you guys so much. Good afternoon. I'm Anna Upton. I'm the CEO of the Everglades Trust. I'm so delighted that you're here with us for a very special announcement with Governor Ron DeSantis. Yes, yes. I'm also really proud to have these men standing behind me. They are representatives of the recreational fishing industry. It is a key driver of our economy here in Florida. They, like Governor Ron DeSantis, get that our environment and our economy are totally connected, and I'm proud that they're standing with me today. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Peterson. He's a Florida boat manufacturer, and he's great supporter of Everglades restoration, so I'm going to let him give a few remarks before I come back.
Thank you, Anna, and welcome, Governor. Yeah. It is a great day here in the state of Florida, is it not? Is this beautiful? Like Anna said, my name is Chris Peterson, and I'm the president of Hells Bay Boat Works. We are a recreational fishing boat manufacturer located on the shores of the Indian River in Titusville, Florida. The name Hells Bay is a place deep in the Everglades for which we've designed our boats to be easily go to. And the reason it's called Hells Bay is because it's so far back in that beautiful country that the old timers used to say it was hell to get into and hell to get out of, hence this great iconic fishing spot, Hells Bay, and therefore the name of our company, but that is why the Everglades is so really important to us. And when we talk about recreational fishing in the state of Florida, it's just not fun and games, really. It is big business in the state of Florida. Recreational fishing is a okay, let's just call it $14 billion a year business in the state of Florida. And supports, like this is just the tip of the iceberg behind us, 120,000 jobs here in the state of Florida. In years prior, you guys remember back when we were having blue-green algae coming out and the Lake O was discharging? Well, prior to 2018, we were having stagnant sales. And all we could attribute that to was, despite really robust sales effort, is the fact that our customers just really had no hope that without a real push for sustainable conservation and restoration, that they really didn't need a fishing boat. But in the last 3 years, we have had absolutely explosive sales growth. And so has a lot of the other manufacturers, and I know there's some boat dealers in the audience here and some other boat manufacturers standing behind us here. So what has changed? What has changed? Well, our customers' outlook. Our customers' outlook has something. They know that something is being done to protect our environment and our estuaries, and they know that the investment in a new boat will not be for naught. It was just a little over 3.5 years ago, within hours of your inauguration, that the Governor DeSantis laid out his bold vision, and it was bold. But not only is it bold vision, and not only talk about it, he took bold action. He's continued to take that bold action. And he's taken that action for our waters here in the state of Florida. And I know that Anna Upton will go further into detail on the specifics of the unprecedented steps that Governor DeSantis has taken to protect Florida waters. Our water is the lifeblood of Florida's economy. Without clean water, we do not have healthy estuaries. Without healthy estuaries, we don't have good fishing. Without good fishing, you don't need me to manufacture you a really high-tech fishing boat, do you? And you don't need a lot of these guys, fishing guides and fishermen and anglers and watermen that are here with me today. You don't need them either, nor the other 120,000 people that depend on clean water for their jobs. Governor DeSantis has championed the Everglades and water quality projects throughout the whole state. I am proud to support Governor DeSantis in all the bold steps that he has taken in Florida. We have a true leader in governor, America's governor, Governor Ron DeSantis. And sir, I want to thank you as a lifelong Floridian for your leadership, that I, as a Floridian, am proud to stand here today and say I'm from the freest state in the nation.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Governor DeSantis, for being here today. You know, Chris called him America's governor. I like to call him America's Everglades governor because he's been an absolute champion on Everglades restoration. And almost 4 years ago, when Ron DeSantis ran for office, he made Everglades restoration a centerpiece of his platform. And he got to work on day one. As soon as he won, he got to work right away. In his inaugural address, he vowed and he pledged to not let the foot draggers get in our way. He vowed to fight for our fishing guides. He vowed to fight to prevent harmful discharges from Lake Okeechobee. And he vowed to fight for our Everglades. And he has delivered. He has. Top Gov. He cleaned house at the South Florida Water Management District. He put in place men and women who understand what matters to everyday Floridians: clean water and getting the water moving in the right direction at the right time. He made reducing harmful discharges and sending more water south to the Everglades the official priority of the state of Florida. And that really mattered because he used his political capital with the federal government to change the way Lake Okeechobee is operated. And because of Governor DeSantis, we are poised for the first time in decades to have a new lake regulation schedule, one that will significantly reduce harmful discharges to our coastal communities, send more water south to the Everglades, and protect water supply. And more than that, it will protect residents, tourists, and businesses that drive our tourism-based economy. Thank you, Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis has also been laser focused on the Everglades Reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee. Like the lake management plan, this reservoir will be a significant reduction in harmful discharges as well, because instead of dumping that polluted water on the coastal communities, we're gonna have a reservoir to send it to where it can be stored and cleaned and sent south to the Everglades and all the way down to Florida Bay as nature intended. And because this project is so important, Governor DeSantis and the South Florida Water Management District have expedited the state's component of it. So not only is it already under construction, it's actually ahead of schedule. All right. Under Governor DeSantis' leadership, the South Florida Water Management District has started, hit major milestones, or completed over 50 Everglades restoration project components. Think about that, 50 project components. Yes. The momentum has been tremendous, and with Ron DeSantis as governor, I don't see that stopping. When a company wanted to drill for oil in the Everglades, Governor DeSantis said no and extinguished that threat. Governor DeSantis also secured historic funding from the state legislature. He set out an ambitious goal to get $2.5 billion for Everglades restoration and water quality initiatives in the state of Florida. He not only hit that goal, he exceeded it by almost $1 billion. And that's because when Ron DeSantis says he's going to do something, he does it. You guys get it. Ron DeSantis is not like other politicians. Politicians make promises all the time. What sets Ron DeSantis apart is that he delivers on those promises, and he has delivered for the Everglades. So if you care about the Everglades, you care about the estuaries, you care about continuing the tremendous progress that we've made over the last 3.5 years, I hope you'll support Ron DeSantis on Election Day, and the Everglades Trust is proud to endorse Ron DeSantis for governor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We got a big day in November coming up. We got to keep this state free. I want to thank Anna and Chris, and I'm really happy to have the endorsement. And at the end of the day, I came when I was running. I had seen what had happened in Stewart and Martin County in 2016 with some of the discharges. I saw what was going on in Southwest Florida in 2018, which was really bad for them. I also talked with people in the Florida Keys about Florida Bay and all these other things. And there's a lot of people that had concerns about what was going on and wanted to see us take another course. And I obviously, as someone that grew up here, understood the importance that fishing and boating and recreation play for Florida's way of life, not just for people visiting Florida, but people who grow up in Florida to be able to enjoy this natural environment that we've been blessed with. So I said, okay, I hear you. I'm going to do something about it. And so I got elected, and I proceeded to do what I said I would do. And we put a whole new paradigm in place. We had sweeping changes to policy. I got rid of everyone on the South Florida Water Management Board my first week in office. We set funding goals to be able to do the projects. You know, we have this project on the eastern part of Lake Okeechobee. We've completed that. We now have the one on the west side that is going, and we're going to get that done. And then, of course, our portion of South, and we want the federal government to do more on their share there. But we've raised the Tamiami Trail. We've done all this stuff. So you now have water going through the Everglades in record amounts like we've never seen before. It's going into Florida Bay. Florida Bay is nicer. You look at what's happened on our coast. They've gotten better. And so we did what we said we'd do, but we exceeded what we said we would do. And it's particularly with the funding. You know, I said we needed to do more because, quite frankly, this requires infrastructure. You're basically taking a state and you're making sure it has adequate plumbing, because we had how God made it, and then man kind of changed that, and it created some problems. And so we're just trying to go back to God's design, basically, is all we're doing. And so you needed to be able to have the infrastructure to be able to do that. So we said we were going to do over my 4 years $2.5 billion, which was a $1 billion increase over the previous 4 years. And when I announced that my first week in office, people said, oh man, you know, that's nice, but that's not going to happen. And so we said, no, we'll get it done. And so not only did we do 2.5, we did 3.3 billion. So we more than doubled what had happened in the previous 4 years. And it shows our commitment, and we have a lot of projects that have broken ground, are ahead of schedule, and have been completed, and we're going to continue to do that and finish all these tasks. But part of the reason we were able to do that, and part of the reason these guys are selling boats, is yes, we're working hard to make sure the environment's nice, but we also kept the state open over the last 2 years. That mattered more than anything. And if you remember, so we had, in fact, it was a little bit more than 2 years, like July of 2020, I had a congressman from Florida, all the Democrats, wrote me a letter, July 20th, 2020, saying, shut the state of Florida down. That's what they wanted to do. All of our political opponents wanted this state shut down. They wanted all these jobs to go away, and they wanted all these businesses to be destroyed. And we would not let that happen here. And so we saved the economy here. We saved hundreds of thousands, if not more, jobs. We saved so many small and family-owned businesses. You now look at what people have done in our leisure, hospitality, boat manufacturing, all these things. They have never done better in their lives than they have over the last couple years. That would not have happened if these folks had had their way and shut everything down. So we made sure to do that, and what that did was, one, it allowed them to be able to continue to work. Obviously, people wanted things to be able to do. They loved outdoors. Then everyone was visiting Florida. 2021, we set a record for domestic tourism in our state, because we were like the only refuge of sanity in a world gone mad. That's why they came. So they knew you could come to Florida, and people would tell me they would come from lockdown jurisdictions and they'd land in Florida, and they're like, this must be what it was like going from East Berlin to West Berlin. It was like a different country, and people are looking around, they're like, oh my gosh, people are actually living normally. But they wanted to visit because they wanted to be able to make their own decisions. They wanted to be free. They didn't want to have mandates imposed on them or vax passports or any of that. And so that was one of the reasons why we set a record. We also, if you look at 2021 tourism for international visitors, in 2021, of all the international tourism to the United States, Florida accounted for almost 45% of the entire country. I don't know too many people that want to buy a ticket from Europe to go to like New York City and then be denied entrance at a restaurant because of some Vax Pass or something like that. So there was all those things. And then another thing that helped this industry too is we refused to let these teachers unions and the left close our schools. We had schools open. They sued me. They sued me 2 years ago in the summer to try to close the schools in Florida. And we said every parent in Florida has a right to send their kid to school in person 5 days a week. And we faced tremendous opposition from that, from the media, from these public health people who've really disgraced themselves with their partisanship and their idiocy. You also had my political opposition. We're all against it. We got sued over it, and we won. And now they're reporting how you had all this tremendous loss of educational achievement, and that's all in these states, that had these terrible, terrible policies. So those politicians made a deliberate decision to sacrifice the future of these kids at the altar of their own political ambitions. I refuse to do that in the state of Florida. So what happened was you would have people come and they would bring their families because they're like, this is insane. We don't have access to school or this or that. You have mandates that are coming down. So they moved. And so a lot of people that have moved here, you got to figure out, it's like when in Rome. So what are you going to learn to do? Like some you can learn to golf, but a lot of them learn to boat and fish. This is like new. The problem is they'll buy these boats. They don't know necessarily how to run them right yet. And so you'll know like who the newcomers are. And these boat captains are like, yep, that person just moved here. We've got to teach them a little bit. So you learn, that's fine. I mean, that's just, but people were looking for ways that they could enjoy Florida. And that was a lot of these newcomers who would buy these boats. And so we're happy that that was the right decision for the kids and their education. We're happy that that was the right decision for these jobs and these businesses. And we're also happy that because we did that, that's part of the reason we're able to be here and say we have record funding. Because we've kept the state open, because we have a low tax environment, we have by far the biggest budget surplus in the history of the state of Florida. Not even close. So we finished the last fiscal year at $102 billion budget top line, and that yielded a budget surplus of $22 billion, a massive surplus. So of course we're going to be able to meet these obligations, and we're going to continue to do more. We've already said, we're going to continue obviously with all these projects. What we also have been able to do is build an infrastructure so that the state can respond to some of these things that happen. So for example, the algae, that's not the state of Florida discharging that. That's the federal government. It's the Army Corps of Engineers. And so we're in a situation where if the Corps is doing that, we want to be able to mitigate. So we now have new technologies that help clean the blue-green algae in Lake Okeechobee. I got companies from Israel all around the world are coming to help us with this. And so it's something that's very, very important. We also, and it doesn't affect this coast as much as it affects our Gulf Coast, but we now have an infrastructure in place for millions and millions of dollars for research into mitigating red tide, which has been going on. It's for all of recorded Florida history. You've had it happen, but the question is, are these discharges or things exacerbating it? Are there ways we can mitigate it? So they're doing a lot of different experiments right now, and I think within the next 5 years, we're going to have ways that if there is a bloom, we can at least mitigate, because it stinks, it's not good to be, it hurts tourism, people don't like it, and so we want to do what we can to do that. So all this is in place. None of this existed before I was governor, and so we've been able to do. We did a blue-green algae task force where we had a bunch of scientists say, what can we do? We ended up passing clean water legislation for the state of Florida. So we've been able to do a lot of different things. But we also have had, since I've been governor, we've had probably the fewest amount of discharges out of Lake Okeechobee than we've had in a 4-year period. And part of the reason for that is before I even got elected, I got elected, but before I even took office, I flew to Washington to meet with President Trump, and I said, hey, I was like, we've got this problem in Lake Okeechobee. I was like, all this water is being spewed. And he's like, well, we'll stop doing it. And I'm like, we're not doing it. The Army Corps is doing it. And he said, all right. He's like, what do you need from them? And I was like, just tell them to have some balance into how they manage the lake. I understand, like, you need to have water there, there's different needs, but you can let that lake go down a little lower going into the summer. We know we're going to get rain. It'll end up rising, but hopefully it won't rise to the level where you have to do all these discharges. And so he told the Corps to work with the state of Florida, and so they ended up changing the way they managed the lake within the confines of their regulations, but it did make a difference. And then now we have this new lake regulation schedule that's going to be adopted, which basically recognizes that you can't just say the lake should be managed so that we spew all this into the coastal communities. That's not good for our way of life, it's not good for our economy, and it's not fair, and it's not balanced. So now we have more of a balanced approach when you're looking at that. So that made a huge difference, because we can talk about record funding, we could talk about accelerating projects. The fact is, when I took office in January 2019, we did not have the infrastructure that we needed. We've been building it, and so we needed to have a period where those discharges were not overwhelming. And I'm glad that that's been able to happen. And I'm glad that we're now in a situation where we're going to be doing this new regulation schedule. So, and then, you talk to people even in the Keys with what they've seen down in Florida Bay. Very, very important. I mean, I'm happy to say, we are the boating and fishing capital of the world here in the state of Florida. People come from all over to help. People have also come from all over because we've put a lot of emphasis and even put more money behind removing Burmese pythons from the Florida Everglades. Yeah. These people will come from all over the world to come and do our python challenges, and they'll want to remove the pythons from the Everglades, and we've had more and more done every year. I want to deploy more technologies. It's hard to find these pythons in the Everglades, but they reproduce so quickly. It's really, really crazy. I don't know who put those in there. They are not native to the Everglades. But that's a big disaster that they did that, because they eat everything that they find, and it really hurts the kind of natural ecosystem. So we've done a lot on that. We've put a lot of money behind that, and those challenges have been very, very good. So really the whole 9 yards, we're really fortunate. And my view on all this is, you hear some of these people, around the world at Davos or this, and talking about you can't use energy, and that's their view on the environment, is to not let average people have reliable, cheap energy. That's what they're trying to drive towards. So if you look at Europe, what's going on right now, you're seeing huge problems, but you're only scratching the surface. That is going to get a lot worse. That's going to create a lot of unrest. You see what's happening in California. You have California. They're very concerned about what's going on in Florida. I would be more concerned about managing your own house over there. So you see all those, and so first of all, it's important in Florida, we are not going to let those types of policies take hold here where we're denying. Just imagine if they control your thermostat in the summer and they don't want it to go, whatever. No, we need reliable energy, and that's just something that we're going to be. So you're not going to see us imposing these ridiculous mandates like they're doing in some of these other states. What they say in California, you're not going to be able to drive a normal car in 10 years. Give me a break. What a farce. If you converted everyone's car to electric, we don't have the power grid to be able to handle that. So this is all just ideology. But I think, though, because they're so concerned about doing those types of policies, which are very harmful, particularly for working class people, they lose sight of, when I think of environment, I think of the environment that we as Floridians want to enjoy, that we appreciate, being able to look at, being able to go on the water, being able to fish, being able to do all those things. And you're kind of going off in this tangent on ideology, and we're just doing things that people of all backgrounds and political stripes think is important because it affects their daily life. And so we never lost sight of what was really important for this state, and we've been able to deliver, great results. And you do have, as Anna said, you've got a lot of these politicians, they run around, they make all these different promises, and it's all just like it goes and disappears into the wind once they take office. They never actually get anything done. And so part of what we've been able to do is not just have the good policies and be able to dedicate resources, but we've shown the leadership necessary to get all this done. And that's really the most important commodity in a governor. because there's governors that are bad on policy. There's governors that are good on policy. But even if you're good on policy, if you don't have the willingness to lead, if you don't have the willingness to get out in front on issues, then you're not going to ultimately accomplish what needs to be accomplished. And I'm just happy to say, when I came in office, I didn't take a bunch of polls about anything. I just said, I promise what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. And we've really never diverted off the course on all these important issues. So we have, I think it's like a little more than 60 days away before our November election. And I know all of you are going to vote early. It's a lot more. I mean, when I was running 4 years ago, and Linda knows, and Sue, we were down. I mean, there were like 275,000 more Democrats than Republicans in the state of Florida, and we had never, ever in Florida history had more Republicans registered than Democrats. Well, today, it's now Republicans have an advantage of 267,000 registrations. And I'll tell you, the people that are coming to Palm Beach, they're registering overwhelmingly as Republicans. You look at what we're doing in Miami-Dade, it's fantastic, you'll see. Now, part of it, I think, is because we've done a good job and people have responded to that, but I do acknowledge some of that is because people look at Biden and they're like, I don't want anything to do with that. I got to go the other direction from there. And so that's why, we've really been, I think, a place where sanity prevailed when the world went mad. We're not going to let Biden's policies be imposed on the state of Florida. We're going to make sure that we keep the state free and keep the state thriving. But these are very important because just think 4 years ago when we had our governor's race, a very close race. We knew it was important because there were different philosophies at stake, but we didn't know there was going to be a pandemic. We certainly didn't think a governor would lock kids out of school for a year and a half or do all these crazy things. And yet that would have happened in this state, had we not been successful. So my message is just, people enjoy being in Florida. Probably people are more proud of being in Florida now than when I was a kid growing up. It's just because we're looked to now around the country as, hey, Florida's getting it right. But don't take any of that for granted. That can all change very, very quickly. You're hearing Canada talk about imposing more restrictions this winter. You're going to have European elites are going to probably push for that. You are absolutely going to see that in deep blue enclaves around the country. In fact, there are blue enclaves that are force masking kids in school. Still, after over 2 years of this, they are punishing these little kids by muzzling them for 8 hours a day. So that is what. And I know that there's some hesitation on some of those folks because they know the election's coming up and they don't want to necessarily let the cat out of the bag. But trust me, once that election is over, they are going to be unleashed and they are coming after your freedom if you let them get in power. So in Florida, that type of policy, that type of view is dead on arrival. We're not going to let it happen here. We're going to make sure we keep this state prospering. We're going to make sure we keep this state a law and order state. We're going to make sure we keep this state dedicated to educating kids, not indoctrinating kids. We're going to make sure that we deliver tax relief with that big surplus. We need to deliver tax relief. And so we're going to be rolling out more proposals over the next couple weeks that we're going to be doing there. And we also need to make sure that we continue honoring our commitments to the treasure that God has given us, the great state of Florida. And we will leave it to our kids and grandkids, and we'll leave it to God better than we found it. God bless you all. Thank you so much.